Hey everyone! Welcome to our video on how to format tables according to APA guidelines. I'm James Hayashi, the writing advisor for Master's Program students. There's a lot of information in this video, so feel free to pause, rewind, or rewatch as needed. We'll start with the planning stage. The first question to ask yourself is whether you really need a table at all. In other words, will this table clarify and supplement the text of your paper, or merely repeat it? If you can summarize all the data in a sentence or two, you can probably forego a table. Second, have you mentioned the table in the text? If not, this is an indication that you may not need it. Next, be sure that you've numbered the table with an Arabic number in the order in which you've mentioned it in the body of the paper. And make sure you've given the table a brief explanatory title and set the title in italics. Let's look at a sample. So here you can see our table. There's plenty of data, way too much to be presented in sentence format without overwhelming a reader. We'll zoom in and see that this is table 3, labeled with Arabic number 3, or the third table mentioned in the body of the paper. And right below is the descriptive but concise title provided in italics, right here. Next, you'll need to consider the layout of the table. As you're arranging the columns, make sure to place columns with data to be compared beside each other. This makes it easier for your reader to analyze your findings. Each of these columns should also have a heading, which is not too much wider than the data beneath it. Abbreviations are allowed in the headings, but any non-standard abbreviation should be explained in the table notes. More on that later. A list of commonly recognized abbreviations is listed on page 109 of the APA manual. The entries in each column should be written to create parallelism between them, and comparable values should be carried out to the same number of decimal places. Here's our example again. You can see that the total organization numbers and the study sample numbers are placed side by side to help readers determine whether the sample was representative of the larger group. Each column has a heading, and the headings aren't much wider than the numbers beneath them. This column spanner right here uses the term Comic-Con, which is explained in the table notes below. Notice that the races here are listed in parallel, as opposed to if one like this were listed as Americans of African descent. And you can see that the data have been carried out to one decimal place. When you start formatting the table, there are a few things to keep in mind. Is it easy to read with a font that doesn't make the reader squint but isn't overwhelmingly large either? The whole table should be either single-spaced or double-spaced, including the title, headings, and notes, depending on what looks the most readable. You might want to try single spacing it, then double spacing it, and comparing the two to see which is easier to read. Be sure to include sufficient white space so the table doesn't look too cluttered. All abbreviations, use of special italics, parentheses, and dashes, and special symbols must be explained. And the probability levels should be correctly labeled, with asterisks attached to the appropriate table entries. Remember to assign the same number of asterisks to a probability level throughout all the tables in your document. You can see here that the table is fairly easy to read and is single spaced throughout. Notice that the use of the dash, along with both p levels, have been clarified by the table note directly beneath the table. So right here, the use of the dash is explained, along with the p-values. Finally, as you're preparing the table to insert into your document, here are a few last considerations. Have the table notes been given general first, then specific, then probability? General notes are those that pertain to the whole table, such as if you have borrowed it from another source with correct citation format, or abbreviations or symbols. Specific notes are those that pertain only to certain columns, rows, or cells. There should be no vertical lines at all in your table. Again, be sure to properly cite any data that is not your own. And lastly, check to see that any similar tables in your paper are formatted consistently. Here's our sample table again. You can look and see that the notes are given general, here, information about how the data was analyzed, specific, explanation of the column spanner, and the meaning of the dash, and probability values last. You'll also see, of course, that there are no vertical lines. I hope this was helpful. Remember that you can rewatch the video in part or in whole if you missed something or just need a periodic refresher. This video has a fairly comprehensive summary of table conventions, but if you'd like more information, you can check out pages 127 to 141 of the APA Manual, 6th edition. The manual also has plenty of sample tables in pages 142 to 149. Feel free to contact me at my email address listed here if you have other questions related to table formatting, APA rules, or writing in general. Happy writing!